Eliza Hull was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie tooth disease at age 5. It's a condition that causes nerve damage, mainly in the arms and legs.
The way that it affects me is I fall over regularly. I walk, very differently. And I have muscle loss in my arms and legs. And, I can't open jars that are really hard to open when I'm cooking. But mostly, I guess the biggest challenges has really been the attitudes that I've faced out in society.
Hull is a writer, journalist, and disability advocate. She's dealt with judgment all her life, but was surprised by the discrimination she faced from her own doctor when she decided it was time to start a family.
I was excited, I was really ready to start a family, and I was met at the time really with discrimination. And he said that he didn't think that I'd be able to manage. He didn't think that I should be a parent. And I believed him because I think we are really taught to believe medical professionals. And I felt a lot of shame and vulnerable in that moment. And luckily, I went back to my partner and I told him what had happened. And he just said we should still do it. And luckily, he said that because now we have 2 gorgeous kids
who are now 2 and 7 years old. During Hull's first pregnancy, the doctors were concerned about her body's ability to safely give birth while dealing with her neurological condition. These worries led to many more interventions than Hull believes was necessary.
I wasn't allowed to get off the bed. So I had to sit there and birth my first baby. They didn't want me to move around in case I had a fall So that was really hard because all my instinct was saying, to just move around. Like that's what my body was wanting to do. And yet they were, worried for me.
At the time, Hull didn't know how to advocate for herself. She fully trusted her doctor's advice, even when it went against what her body was telling her. And when she did try to research other women in similar situations, Hull was disappointed with what she found.
I wanted to read stories like mine. I wanted to know ways, that you could adapt as a parent with a disability, but there was absolutely nothing out there. And when I even did a search online, it was often that it was portrayed that it would be a real burden for a child to have a parent with a disability.
Hull decided to take matters into her own hands and created a podcast called We've Got This. It gave a voice to disabled parents, showing that having a disability does not make someone an inadequate parent. By listening to all of these different experiences, Hull felt more prepared and confident going into her second pregnancy.
That was a completely different situation where I was able to move around. I went in the shower and had time in the shower, went back to the bed, moved around on the ball. And for that reason, didn't at that point need any intervention at all. Had a wonderful birth. So I guess it was kind of quite healing to have a really wonderful birth the second time around. But to know my own rights as a person with disability birthing took time.
Her podcast has now been turned into a book called We've Got This, Stories by Disabled Parents. Hull says it's been incredible to give both disabled and non-disabled people a look into different parenting experiences. In fact, she thinks that growing up with a neurological condition has prepared her for parenthood more than anything else.
Being a person with disability all your life, you really have to be very adaptable and creative and a great problem solver because the world is not built for you. For instance, parents that are deaf and that use, a baby cry alarm that vibrates on their body so that they know that their baby's crying. Or, putting bells on your children's shoes if you're blind so that you know where your children are in the backyard. Just little ways that people with disability just make it work. I think that is just really, it constantly surprises me because it just is like, yeah, wow, we really are very, very good at problem solving and making it work.
But that doesn't mean Hull never had moments of doubt. How could she be a good parent if at any moment she could fall while holding her baby?
I'd be lying if I said there was no fear. I think that's why I did start to believe that maybe I shouldn't be a parent, if I'm completely honest. But I think the thing is, when you are holding a baby, that every part of your body is thinking about that. You're just completely focused on holding a baby. And I did have a fall when I was holding my baby, but it was like, you're holding your baby, as you fall onto your knees and your baby's just completely right on your chest because you're just completely in protective mode. So there wasn't absolutely nothing that went wrong at all.
Despite all the worry from her doctors, that was the one and only time Hull has fallen with her child. In fact, out of all the people that will read her book, Hull hopes her main audience is medical professionals. Even with all their knowledge around disabilities, Hull believes much of the medical community still hold discriminatory mindsets toward disabled parents.
In the book, that is time and time again who is kind of really where the discrimination takes place. So, for instance, parents with an intellectual disability, when they have a child, often they're really set up to fail right from the beginning. They are not seen as competent parents. And there's stories in the book where medical professionals actually, as soon as a baby's born, ring child protection to take the baby away, basically. And this is still happening today. Over 60% of parents have their children taken if they have an intellectual disability.
Hull's book details a couple who had to go to court and fight to keep their child.
When they do make it to court, they're actually told at that moment how sorry that they've had to go through this because they are competent and they make great parents and they're showing the skills, and all they needed was just a bit of support.
Hull hopes her book brings new understanding about what it means to be a parent with a disability. We've Got This is available on her website, elizahull.com. You can find more information about Eliza Hull and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson. This segment is brought to you by Capital One. With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A., member FDIC. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
They never once came back and said, I'm sorry, there's nothing else we can do. You could almost see it in their eyes sometimes like, we've got to try something else. We've got to get another solution.
How creative doctors saved a life.
Then how can you be more productive while you sleep?
It's just a very unique state of consciousness to be seeing a completely hallucinatory world around you and yet know that your mind is creating this rather than that this is physical reality there.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal. I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
When you stretch your supply chains 9,000 miles from Chongqing to New York or from Shanghai to Amsterdam, etc., you create so many linkages, so many transportation lanes, so many handlers, so many things that can go wrong.
The long-term benefits of building a more resilient supply chain system. Then,
people were really interested in cooking thematically. So people would throw yellow dinners and orange dinners and pink dinners.
The Odd Recipes of Early Modern America. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.